So you just got your first Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy deck because you love the games and the art is cool. But now you want to know what to do with these cards, right? Look, me too, I was the same way, so I've been figuring out how to play the game. Also, I can help other Final Fantasy fans like you get into it. So in this video, I'm going to lay out the basics of the game using Final Fantasy terminology to help explain it. So listen up and let's mosey. In Final Fantasy games, battle systems are everything, whether you prefer turn-based or a more active style. Well, in Magic the Gathering, you'll be playing a turn-based style with all kinds of active twists. The difference is, you'll actually have your own health meter as you take on opponents. But here's the thing, you yourself won't be on the battlefield. Much like in the video games, you'll be the one in control, but more like a general sending out troops, or like a summoner conjuring up helpers to fight and defend for you. And if your defensive line gets broken, you'll be vulnerable to your opponent's summoned creatures, because just like you, your opponents will be conjuring up an army of allies as well. The last player standing gets the win. So you're in command, but you're not the warrior. You're the summoner. You're like Yuna or Rydia or Eiko from the games. Your role is to guide the fight, channeling energy from resources available and summoning powerful allies to strike down any enemy summoner who gets in your way. Now, where do you get the power to cast these spells and summon these creatures? Well, in Magic, you get the power from the land, or, to use Final Fantasy VII terms, the planet. To access this power each turn, you'll have to tap the resource, or for Final Fantasy VIII fans, you draw the resource, right? In Magic, tapping a card means that you'll turn the card sideways to show that you've used its power for that turn and gain access to the power of the planet. So with those basics out of the way, let's dive into what you need to know to enjoy Magic the Gathering as a Final Fantasy fan. All right, first things first, let's talk about how to read a card. Think of each card like a summoner's bestiary or a spellbook. On each card, you're going to find the following. First, the name of the summon, the spell, or the item. This is what you're going to call the card. Next, a mana cost. Anybody who's ever played a mage class in a Final Fantasy game knows the importance of magic point management, or MP. Similarly, mana is the MP in the world of Magic the Gathering. You pay mana to cast or summon pretty much everything here, and you do it by using land resource cards. These are limited resources that end up being pretty similar to MP. Unlike Final Fantasy games, when MP costs can escalate into the hundreds, mana costs in Magic are significantly lower, usually single digits in fact. The highest mana cost in Magic the Gathering is currently 16, and you can imagine that's going to be a pretty powerful spell. But in the Final Fantasy deck that you're likely using, the most expensive cards are going to cost around 8 or 9 mana. Like Final Fantasy XV's defensive powerhouse, the Ancient Adamantoise. Look at these stats. Okay, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. I haven't talked about that yet. We're going to get there. Let's keep going. All right, so how do you read the mana cost? Let's talk about what these little symbols mean. There are 5 colors of mana in Magic: white, blue, black, red, green. Each with its own symbol to help you know what to do. Now, for my Final Fantasy VII coded eyes, I immediately think of materia, and it's not too far off, but these are a bit more like land affinity. Each individual symbol represents 1 mana of that color. So to pay the cost, you use mana drawn from the land when you tap it. Each land can typically produce 1 unit of mana, so to cast this card, for example, we'll need 1 white and 1 blue mana. But what do we do with this? Sometimes there's a gray circle with a number next to those symbols. Any color of mana can be used to pay 1 toward this cost. So, to cast Tidus, Blitzball Star, we'll need a total of 1 white mana, 1 blue mana, and 1 additional mana of any color. Yes, I know that a lot of people call him Tidus. Tidus. But I've got the microphone. It's Tidus. All right, next up, let's talk about card type. This is going to let you know what you can expect out of this card. Is it a creature, or a sorcery, or an instant? Is it a kind of thing that you can summon and then it's done, or is it more of a long-term sort of thing? Well, the card type is going to let you know what that is. Now, some of these cards are going to be called legendary. These are iconic characters or powerful artifacts and have a special frame around their name. There's also a card rarity set symbol sort of designation on these cards. Each card has a symbol here to tell you what set it's from. The color indicates whether it's common, uncommon, rare, or mythic rare. This is important, but also it's pretty obvious that you're going to be using the Final Fantasy deck. So that little symbol is going to be Final Fantasy. And a lot of these are limited, legendary, rare. The Final Fantasy deck is filled with mythic, rare, legendary, uncommon, and common cards. And like they say in a certain series, you want to catch them all. So get to it. Next up, we have the text box. This is going to tell you what the summoner spell actually does. The text box is your friend, guys. Also, it may give you some flavor text, meaning it's going to give you some cool lore about the summon, the stuff that you and I really care about, right? Anyway, back to the game. The next piece is probably the most important in all of this. It's the power and the toughness. You'll find this on creatures, and this is the attack power and the health points in the battle, or the HP. A 4/4, for example, can deal 4 damage and receive 4 damage before it falls. The HP of each creature is going to reset every round, by the way. So, what that means is that you don't have to spend a lot of time healing your creatures. Now, any card you play contributes to your army of attackers and defenders. That said, their job is to inflict damage on your opponent and their army, while also protecting you from damage. Once either you or your opponent's HP hits 0, well, it's time to cue the victory music.
Oh, we're done here!
Now, this was by far the hardest part for me to get my mind around. But once you learn how to read the cards, you're in for a good time. With this in mind, let's get to a look at the battlefield. Alright, so being a skilled player, especially in the beginning, means being organized with your cards. Plus, it's just good etiquette when you're playing with others. And to help you think about your battlefield, I want you to designate parts of your play area for the following purposes. First, you're going to need a library. This is your deck of cards. You'll draw from it every turn. Next, you'll need a graveyard. It's sad to think about, but your creatures and summons will occasionally be defeated. Not to worry, they did their job and we salute them. But when they are defeated, what do you do with them? Well, we send them to the graveyard. All defeated summons and expired spells go here. But don't give up on them entirely just yet. Some cards can rise again from the grave, especially if you've got some Necromancer-styled cards. Just because somebody falls doesn't mean you can't bring them back. Now, if only we could do that in the games, right? Next, you're going to need a spot for what we call exiled cards. These are banished or debilitated cards. They're removed from battle entirely. It's kind of like sending a character into another dimension. Harder to bring back, but not impossible. Next, we've got the battlefield. This is where the action happens. This is where you're going to play your active forces and where your creatures, your enchantments, and pretty much everything else stand ready for action, like your front row in battle. And finally, we have a place for your lands. That's right, your MP mana management resource. Remember, this is like storing MP. The more lands you control, the stronger your summons and spells are going to become. And it's also where you're going to keep track of how many lands are tapped or not. Now, this organization is key to victory, and trust me when I say, I know it can be intimidating. So, to make it easier, we've created a stylized playmat for purchase that has an easy-to-understand layout as well as the basics of a turn order, with special artwork provided by artist Tyler Hepner. For more information, check the links in the description. Now, speaking of turn order, now that you understand the battlefield, let's look at what a typical turn is gonna look like. So turns in Magic are a lot like the old school turn-based style of the first 10 Final Fantasy games. There's a flow, predictable, but strategic. Here's what you can expect on your turn. To start out, you're gonna draw 7 cards from the top of your library to create your hand. A good hand has a mix of lands and low-cost cards that you can play in the early turns of the game. However, if you don't like your starting cards, you can reshuffle your hand back in and take a mulligan. When you mulligan, you'll draw a new hand of 7 cards, but put a card from your starting hand on the bottom of your library for each mulligan you've taken. Each one is more costly than the last, so be careful not to take too many of these. After you have your hand, if you're taking the first turn in the game, you will not draw a card from the library. On subsequent turns, this is the rundown of all the stages of your attack. You'll first start with a maintenance or reset phase that will include untapping any resources or creatures who participated in the last round. First, untap. This resets your units and mana sources. That's right, mana is a renewable resource, replenishing every round, no special ethers needed. Next, upkeep. Check to see if there are any cards in play that have effects at this step. Typically, cards will specify this by referring to the beginning of your upkeep. Next, draw. Draw a card from the top of your deck. Now you're ready for the main phase of battle. So, let the battle begin.
It's showtime.
Activating combat mode.
You're going to take actions here. Play a land, summon creatures, cast sorceries, build your battle line. But there is one thing to note. Creatures summoned have summoning sickness, and they can't attack the same round that they arrive, unless they have haste. Look, there's always an exception to the rule, but haste is the exception to this one, right? Next, we have the combat phase. It's time to fight. So choose your attackers, send your characters or creatures into the battle, and it's up to your opponent to pick defenders from their line. One thing to note, if it's your opponent's turn, you'll need to select defenders to block their attack. Once this is done, you'll head into main phase part 2. This is another chance to cast or to build. Sometimes this can be helpful to keep your opponent guessing your strategy. Finally, you'll resolve with the end step. This is resolving all end of turn effects. If you have more than 7 cards in your hand, you'll need to discard to the graveyard until you have 7 exactly. Then, you'll pass the turn. Alright, so what are your basic objectives and roles? Remember, your primary opponent is the opposing summoner. Your goal is to reduce your opponent's HP from 20 to 0 before they drop yours. That doesn't mean exhausting all of their army. That's their choice to use them or not. So sometimes that means you're going to have to deflect their summoned attacks as well. And other times it's going to mean that you're going to hit them with an all-out assault. That's where some strategy comes into play. Do you leave some characters untapped so that they can defend for you, or do you just go in guns a-blazing? Well, the choice is yours. Next, let's talk about some tips for when and how to play certain cards. You are almost always going to play lands first, 1 per turn. More lands equals more MP for summons. Remember, this is pretty much how you're going to start every play. Next, creatures. You want to play creatures during your main phase as you have the mana to summon them. Once they're on the field, as long as they survive attacks, they can perform all kinds of cool attacks and abilities, provided they have enough mana from the lands. They can't attack the turn they enter unless they have haste, like we already talked about, but that's important to remember. Next, let's talk about instants. Instants are quick spells. You can cast them at any time, even during your opponent's turn. Think Counterspell, or Raise, or Protect in response. Next, sorceries. Sorceries are powerful, but slow. Use them wisely. Oftentimes they can be costly. It's kind of like casting Flare or Ultima on your own turn. Next, we have enchantments and artifacts. Status effects are gear. That's what these things are. You're going to buff your party with persistent power with these. And if you're playing Commander, the Final Fantasy decks have a ton of enchantments and artifacts, including the Buster Sword. You're going to want to use that. Next, we've got to talk about Sagas. Sagas in Magic the Gathering are some of the most powerful spells and attacks in the Final Fantasy decks. In Final Fantasy terms, these are akin to the most powerful summons. They're called Sagas because they are multi-phase spells that grow in intensity as the game progresses. Now, I'll explain using one Saga card in the Final Fantasy deck, the iconic King of Monsters, Bahamut. Any Final Fantasy fan knows that Bahamut is among the most powerful summon monsters in any of the games. However, His attacks grow in power and take a while to charge up. There's a slow build to Mega Flare, and certainly for Terra Flare and Zeta Flare. In Magic the Gathering, it works the same way. When you play a Saga card, like Bahamut, it enters the battlefield and you immediately will place a lore counter on it, triggering its first chapter. In this set, the Sagas are also creatures and will still suffer from summon sickness for the round it is deployed. Then, at the beginning of each of your turns, right after your draw step, you add another lore counter and activate the next chapter. After the final chapter resolves, the Saga is sacrificed, meaning the summon is dismissed. Alright, let's break down Bahamut's 4-chapter arc. In Chapter 1, he's going to destroy up to one targeted non-land permanent. This is Bahamut's entrance. Just like how he always drops from the sky and deletes a lesser foe on his arrival, this is your chance to remove something annoying from your opponent. A creature, an artifact, or an enchantment perhaps. It's also helpful to remember that Bahamut is also a creature, which means it can attack as well as perform this action. But not on the first one because he has what? Summon sickness. Right. In Chapter 2, he's going to destroy another permanent. Another round of Bahamut deleting a permanent, but now he no longer has summoning sickness, so he's able to attack as well. Good deal, 2 hits. In Chapter 3, you're going to draw 2 cards, and Bahamut is going to attack once. In the heat of battle, Bahamut at this stage is preparing his attack. So this is your calm before the storm moment, recharging your strategy while your enemy braces for what's coming next. And oh boy, it's coming. You're preparing your final phase, continuing to charge. And finally, in Chapter 4, Bahamut unleashes his legendary move, Mega Flare. He deals damage to each opponent equal to the total mana value of all your other permanents on the battlefield. In simpler terms, the bigger your army and the more expensive your other stuff is, the more devastation Bahamut deals. Once Bahamut casts Mega Flare, Bahamut heads to the graveyard, just like when a summon in Final Fantasy finishes a major attack. Well done, Bahamut. So in this video, we've tried to break it all down for you in the quickest, easiest way possible so that you can get right into the action of the game with your flashy new Final Fantasy decks. But here's the thing, the best way to learn the game is really just to play it, whether it's with a fellow learner or through the Magic the Gathering Arena app. This really is the best way to learn the ropes. But I want you to remember something. This game can get really complicated. Unlike the video games, you're starting with access to both level 1 and level 99 abilities, whether you know how to use them or not. It's kind of like starting someone else's save file with all the endgame abilities, but you're in the grasslands right now just learning how to play. My advice is, play at the level you know currently and just start learning. Most everything is explained on the cards, but if you come across something that has you stumped, hit me up in the comments and we'll try to respond. And who knows, it may spark our next video discussion. In the meantime, we have a lot of Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering content happening, so stay tuned for that. And if you want your very own ProfNoctis Special Edition playmat, check out the links in the description. If this video has been helpful, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and for all your Final Fantasy and Magic the Gathering content, keep it right here on ProfNoctis. Until next time, walk tall, my friends.